Hi everybody, let's look at another key topic of international economics and macroeconomics, which is economic integration, very much in the news recently. We're going to focus in this video on what economic integration is and of different types of trading blocks. So let's get moving by looking at key definitions of what economic integration actually involves. Well, it's a process whereby countries coordinate to reduce trade barriers and maybe to harmonise monetary and fiscal policy. So this is a nice definition because it encompasses the different types of integration that exist. The basic types of integration, which are all about reducing trade barriers, and the deeper forms of integration, where countries go one stage further and decide to harmonise both monetary and fiscal policies to an extent. What about a trading bloc? So we talk about different types of integration, we talk about different types of trading bloc. Well, that is a group of countries that join together and agree to increase trade between themselves. So anytime that happens, those countries together form a trading bloc. And any bilateral and multilateral trade agreements, you need to know how to define those as well. They're two different terms, but basically they are agreements to reduce tariffs and quotas on trade between two countries if it's a bilateral trade agreement, or multiple countries if it's a multilateral trade agreement. Okay, so simple stuff, get those down, learn those, that's important. Often questions like this will require definitions to get you going. Then it's just a case of knowing what the different types of integration are, the different types of trade blocks. So Bella Balassa, an economist, came up with 6 different types of economic integration, 6 different types of trading blocks. Starting with the least amount of economic integration to the deepest form, full integration. So let's start by looking at the first type of trading bloc, known as a preferential trading area, a PTA. This is where countries join together to reduce tariffs or reduce quotas, but only on certain goods and services. So countries have preferential access to goods and services with reduced tariffs and reduced quotas. It's not a case of eliminating all tariffs and quotas, that's not how it works, eliminating all protectionism. Just on certain negotiated goods and services, you might have a reduction in tariffs and a reduction in quotas. Okay, so it's quite common that between the EU and African and Caribbean nations, there is a PTA where the EU negotiates a reduction in tariff or tariff-free access to some extent to key kind of primary commodities, and in return the African and Caribbean nations get back certain manufactured goods, again preferential access to them with reduced tariffs and reduced quotas on them. The next stage is a free trade area. So free trade areas are a much deeper type of integration compared to a PTA, where countries join together and decide to eliminate all trade barriers between each other, but they are free to trade however they want to any country outside the free trade area. I'm going to draw a little diagram here just to make it clear. Okay, so let's say you've got 3 countries. Okay, let's call them country A, country B and country C. Between all of them there is absolute free trade. No embargoes, no tariffs, no quotas. But for any country outside, so let's just take one example, country D, country A might decide to trade freely with country D, fine. Country B may decide to impose a quota on imports from country D. Country C may decide to impose a tariff on certain imports from country D. That's fine. So these 3 nations, A, B and C, are all part of the free trade area, free trade between themselves, but are free to trade however they want with any nation outside the FTA. So good examples of this in the real world. Best example, NAFTA. NAFTA is a very, very good example of a free trade area. There are absolutely loads out there, but that's probably the most common example I can give you. And that's an agreement between Mexico, USA and Canada, free trade area between those 2 nations. The next form of integration, the next trading bloc, is a customs union. So a customs union is a free trade area, but without the freedom of trade with countries outside the customs union. So let's have a look. Okay, so the customs union might be here, in this kind of block here. So again, we'll have country A, country B, and country C. So again, free trade, complete free trade between these nations, so no tariffs, no quotas, no embargoes between these nations. But there is a block, there is a divide between non-member nations, countries outside the customs union. Okay, and what's imposed on these guys are common external barriers. Normally, it's a common external tariff that's put on all imports coming from non-member nations. All right? So it's very much a trading bloc which has benefits purely to those member nations inside it, and those nations who are outside the customs union suffer because of the common external trade barriers imposed on them. So good examples of customs unions in the world: the EU is a perfect example of a customs union. ASEAN is a very good example of a customs union. The Switzerland-Liechtenstein customs union was the very first one that existed. So good examples there. And for the EU, the common external barrier is a tariff imposed on non-member nations. The next stage is a common market, sometimes also known as a single market. But a common market is a customs union, but with deeper integration in terms of common policies on things like regulation, for example. But most importantly, it's the free movement that's allowed in a common market of labour, of capital, of business, basically. Complete free movement between member nations. Okay, so again, a good example of this is the EU. So myself as an EU citizen, if I want to go and set up shop, end up working in Spain, I can do so completely free of charge, right? Costless movement for me to actually end up working in Spain. It's my right as an EU citizen, as part of this common market, to go and set up and work in Spain if I wanted to. Alright, so a good example, EU, yes, but CARICOM. The CARICOM single market is a very good example of a common market, customs union, but with free movement of labour and capital, business, all that kind of stuff. The next stage is of economic and monetary union. So this again has got everything that comes before, but now countries within this union decide to adopt the same currency, decide to adopt the same central bank, and therefore adopt the same monetary policy. So a good example of this is the Eurozone. Very good example of a trading bloc, which is a monetary union. And the final stage is of full economic integration. So this is where countries completely harmonise all policy. Fiscal policy, monetary policy, political power is again given to one actual governing body, and everything else that comes before holds as well. So pure integration. You can argue that the UK is a very close example of full economic integration. Countries of Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England joining together, but governed by the UK Parliament, right? David Cameron in London is the one governing body. That's the 6 different types of trading blocks according to Bella Balassa, going from kind of the least amount of integration to the deepest type of integration here. I'm going to make a separate video on the pros and cons of being part of an economic and monetary union, so certainly tune in for that one. And I'm also going to make separate videos on the trade creation and the trade diversion arguments, as well as other arguments for and against being part of a customs union. So do tune into those for deeper understanding of some of these trading blocks. That's it on this one. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.